speaking with constituents, with stakeholders and with other politicians to really try and get the best outcomes that she can for the community here in Parliament today. I want to thank sincerely the community. And as my colleague said, the queer community is strong and fierce and stands together. And it is with some sadness that today the version of the bill before us is not quite as strong as we would have wanted it to be. However, having said that, I want to sincerely thank the member for Sydney, Alex Greenwich, because this isn't easy and it shouldn't be this hard. It really shouldn't be this hard. And we've heard from opposition members today what we're facing, the fear-mongering, the misinformation. And unfortunately, that has infected members of the Labor Party as well as the Liberal Party. And so even within Labor, it has been very hard for the Labor Party to get to this point. And that is a great tragedy. And sometimes I wish for transparency and democracy, we could have the benefit of seeing those internal party discussions and negotiations on... I don't know if that's a generous offer. I acknowledge the interjection. But the point here is that I understand when you have very large parties and there is a lot of people with a lot of views, but what we end up with from a public perspective is we just get the end result and we don't get to see the deliberations within a particular political party for how they then come to their position. It's different when there's a conscience vote allowed on a matter, then we do get to hear all of those multitude of views, but we haven't had the opportunity to see that from Labor. And I know personally that there are a great number of people within the Labor Party who wholeheartedly would have supported the original version of this bill. But it has been brought the way it has because we have those divergent views. Again, it shouldn't be this hard. I'm incredibly grateful that we have politicians in this place who have nonetheless worked to get to that point, and I do pay my respects and great gratitude to the member for Sydney for that. That said, I also know that this is, and as my colleague knows because of all the phone calls and everything that she's been getting, how hard this is, even though we are getting great changes through today, and I'm going to assume that this bill is going through because I really don't. But there is so much more to do and every single step is so excruciating. I want to say to people who are watching this debate, thank you, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that it has to be this hard every time. I'm really sorry every time there is erasure of intersex people in debates, for instance, as though the biological evidence just doesn't exist. I am really sorry to all of the sex workers that I know and love, who I have spent years working with and advocating on behalf of in this place, who constantly get referred to in negative and discriminatory ways. I'm really sad we didn't get the anti-discrimination changes up that would make a real difference to remove the stigma that sex workers face. And I'm sorry that the lack of that protection continues to put you at greater risk when you are going about your job. Everyone deserves to be safe at work, and that includes sex workers. Sex work is work. And I also want to pay particular thanks and sorrow and to let you know that I see you, to all of the trans women in particular, the whole trans women in particular that I think bear a particular load when it comes to the debates that are had in public around trans rights. And I think trans people are some of the most vulnerable in our society. And when you look at the rates of suicide, of health issues, the idea that that we would hold trans people up and attack them in the way that I see them being attacked by the opposition here is just heartbreaking, because it's already so hard to be a trans woman in our society. As a true feminist and as a very proud bisexual woman, I will declare that none of us are free until we are all free. And to call yourself a feminist, to say that you are somehow worried about women, to not then include all women, is really quite extraordinary. And a lot of it seems to be based on a really old-fashioned understanding, not just of biology and this ignorance and trying, not to accept the realities of the situation, but I honestly want to give people the benefit of the doubt and actually address one of the main issues. And actually this was yelled at me as I was coming in yesterday. There was a man outside who was yelling at me about, he said, if I identified as a giraffe, you'd put me in a mental asylum, he said. But because I identify as if I say I identify as a woman, then you'll let me into a woman's bathroom. Words to that effect. Now, this idea, and again, I don't want to credit this argument, but I feel like if I'm to give the benefit of the doubt that people actually view this as a valid argument, I'm going to try and explain why it's ridiculous. Firstly, the idea that someone is naturally at danger in a toilet. Let's just think about that first. When I go into a bathroom, whether it be a unisex bathroom or a male or female or all gender, whatever it happens to be, I don't expect that when I'm in the cubicle I'm at a particular danger from anybody around me. I don't understand what the idea is that if there's somebody in there that when they are going to the toilet that, I don't know, that they're somehow not, or what other people, I don't know, they're doing it in a cubicle. I don't know what the idea is, that somehow that is an inherent danger to women in the cubicle next door. I don't understand what that's about. But if what people are actually saying is that men are inherently a danger in an enclosed space with women, that is a different issue, because if a man is gaining access to a bathroom to presumably attack a woman or do something terrible to a woman, that's a man to do that. If, however, it's somebody who identifies as a woman and is a trans woman and is a woman going into a bathroom, they're going in there because they're a trans woman. So I don't understand why is the argument that a trans woman is somehow going to, I don't know. I'm really struggling to understand what this could be about. But then when we look at what the Honourable Susan Carter said about change rooms, again, we seem to have this concept that if we're in a shared change room, then all genitals are out, and apparently that's inherently offensive. When I was at school, I was very shy about my body, and I always went into a cubicle in a change room anyway. But I don't know why, again, there's this fear that if a person was to be in a change room with someone else, that they would, by virtue of being trans, somehow have genitals out in a way that other people wouldn't. I honestly don't understand what this is getting at. So again, I come back to this point of, if your concern is that men will attack women, then we're talking about men attacking women and by subterfuge trying to get in to a woman's only space in order to attack that woman. But if we're talking about trans women entering a woman's space, it's because they're a woman. And if you are somehow saying that there is trans women are inherently aggressive or of more danger than other women, then yes, you are transphobic. Yes, you are a TERF. And I think that we need to be very clear about that, because it is transphobia to be making these assumptions about people simply because they are trans. That was my attempt at trying desperately to understand this argument and to say back to people, I have engaged with your argument. It's patently ridiculous. You need to own your own phobic reaction and accept that trans people are not a threat to you. They are not a threat to me. They are not a threat to other women. They are people going about their own lives like the rest of us. I just want to end by saying when I stand in this place, I do get a little bit concerned because the views are so out of touch with what I think the majority of people have outside of this room. But what gives me hope is when I speak with children, because children don't have these hang-ups. Children just accept each other. And I love it when I speak with my children and they talk about school friends, whether it's how they identify, what pronouns they use, whether they're bi or straight or gay or whatever they happen to be, whether they're autistic, whether they've got ASD, whether they're in a wheelchair, whatever it happens to be, they are just like, yeah, that's them. They're just accepting. They don't have these hang-ups. They don't have these old-fashioned ideas about genitals. They don't have these old-fashioned ideas about trying to box people into an identity that makes other people comfortable, because they're accepting. And so that gives me hope, because the world is changing. Young people get it. The vast majority of people in the outside world get it. It's a shame that the people in this place don't. We will keep fighting against your transphobia. We will keep standing up for every single member of